Hey everyone, welcome back to KL Tech Videos, the place where we dive deep into the world of home media servers. Today, we're embarking on the ultimate guide to Jellyfin and Jellyseerr, the dynamic duo that can revolutionize how you manage your movies, TV shows, and more. In this jam-packed video, we'll cover it all. 3 ways to install Jellyfin on Windows, Linux, and the super convenient Docker method. No matter your setup, we've got you covered. Learn how to harness the power of Jellyseerr to streamline media requests and automate downloads, and integrate seamlessly with Sonar and Radar amongst the R's apps. We'll take a fair and unbiased look at the history, the split, and the key differences between these two popular media server platforms. So whether you're a Jellyfin newbie or a seasoned pro, get ready to level up your home media server game. We'll have everything you need to create a personalized entertainment hub that's easy to use and incredibly powerful. So let's get into it. The free software medium system. As it says on their main page, Jellyfin is the volunteer-built media solution, and essentially, this is the forked version of Emby. Now, you may have heard of Emby. That is pretty much the paid version, although there are free elements to it. A lot of the features are behind a paywall. Jellyfin stems from that. The original developers came from Emby according to their own website. And to summarize exactly why they forked Emby into Jellyfin is basically, to summarize it, is this. The Emby project started moving towards a closed source paid model, which didn't align with the original free software vision. A group of dedicated developers forked the project to create Jellyfin, ensuring a future where media management remains open and accessible to everyone. And that essentially is a dumbed down version of this page. You can certainly pause here and have a good read, or even go to the website to get more details. But moving on, we're going to be kicking this off with a Windows installation, moving on to Linux and then to Docker. And then eventually we'll move on to the Jellyseerr Docker installation. So let's get into it. So the first thing we're going to do, and all links as usual will be in the description below, is download the latest version of Jellyfin. So if we go over to the downloads page, and we go to the server option, and we click on Windows. We've got 2 versions here. We're going to go with the standard version. We're AMD 64, and we'll just go with the executable file. My downloads folder here in KL Tech Videos, that's downloading, and we'll open that up after download. A straightforward looking thing. Okay, so we'll just go with a basic recommended installation. You can actually go with a service installation if you'd like, but there's a bit of additional configuration to access network shares. We're just going to crack on with the basic installation option. We're going to go to the recommended install directory. Now, bearing in mind, you wouldn't want to install this immediately if you have Emby running right now. You might want to shut that down because this does use the exact same ports, although I will show you how to change those ports in a second. Jellyfin tray app. And there she is. And the server right now will just be booting up and going through its initial configuration startup. We're going to right click that tray icon and just click open Jellyfin. The other way you can do this is literally by going into the web browser and going to localhost or your IP address at 8096. This is the initial startup wizard. So you're just going to pick whatever suits yourself. And this is essentially where we can now add our media libraries. So what I should really do is have a test thing. You would immediately put this to wherever your movies, TV shows, things are. You're going to create a media library for each different individual setup there. So what we're going to do is we're going to click Add Media Library. The content's going to be movies. We're going to leave the name as movies. And then we're going to navigate to where on the system this is. Now, on Windows, obviously, we're going to be in the users, well, it could be any directory, I suppose, on any hard drive that you have. But in my particular case, I've put it in my user directory, Keith, downloads, KL Tech Videos. I've created a folder in my downloads folder called Jellyfin Media. And this is what I'm going to put eventually my movies, my TV shows, and music. So what you need to do is point this at, we'll start with movies. So you're going to need to find your movies folder, the folder on your system where you have all your movies neatly stored in each folder that they're in. And we're going to click movies here, and you can see that I've already got one film in there waiting to be looked at. We're not going to go into that folder because right now we're at the movies level folder. And we don't want to go in there because you might have a lot of films below here. I've just got the one in there at the moment. So we're just going to go to the movies directory and click OK. Then you've got some options and it says, do you want to enable the library? Great. Obviously we do. What language do you want to have? We're going to have English. This is all dependent on your location, obviously. Embedded titles over file name sounds great. And what that basically means is if it can't find the metadata for this file, do you want it to be called the actual file name it's stored at, which might be something Blu-ray, XH264 or something like that, or do you want it to find the embedded file name if it has one? And if it does, we'll prefer that. It's a collection. This is dependent on yourself. I personally don't have this refresh the metadata after its initial install, but essentially if you thought that this might change over time for this particular directory or something, you could set it to something like every 90 days or something, and that keeps things up to date. Metadata savers, I always choose the NFO for option because if you ever have to move these things out into a different server or you're just backing up and restoring everything, this saves a lot of the metadata information into the folders of your movies. And if it does pick up NFO files already in the location of your movie folders, it can help pull that information and just display everything a lot quicker. Same with saving artwork into the folders, like the thumbnails, chapters, things like that. Brilliant stuff. So trick play, this is something I haven't seen on Emby, so it might be something similar, but called something different, but let's have a look. So trick play images are similar to chapter images, except they span the entire length of the content and are used to show a preview when scrubbing through videos. Yeah, that sounds good to me. And don't forget, the more things you tick on here, the longer your initial import is going to be of importing those films. Yes, we'll do it via the library scan. Yes, we'll do chapter extraction, and that's in there. The library scan as well. So that's a pretty good setup for our movies folder. So if we click OK here, that should now start searching for our movies there. Now at this point, you can also do the same thing for your TV and then do the same thing for music as well. And you might even want your own box office one, whatever you want to put in here. These are going to be the libraries that you have for your media. So movies, TV shows, music, pretty much any combination that you want. Okay, and we'll do the same now for our TV shows. Content type is going to be shows. I like that to be labeled TV shows. The folder this is going to be in is, again, users. And this is going to be whatever you put yours. It's not going to be the same as mine. In media, so you've got my movies there, but now we've got TV shows. And you can see that I've got this, the Lawless Years 1959 in there as well. So if we click that, okay. I happen to know that I don't have all the episodes for that show, so it should actually only show, I think, episode 1, 3, and 6. Yours, obviously, might have the full amount. So we'll do English, United Kingdom. If there are any specials detected, label them as specials. Yes. Prefer those embedded titles if possible. Yeah, why not? Again, this is all down to your personal preference. Saving artwork into folders. Automatically merge programs that are spread across multiple folders. And that is a really powerful option because most people will have, for example, their favorite TV series in one folder on one drive. But in rare circumstances, you might find a drive being full, or you might have accidentally downloaded them into multiple folders. It's unlikely, but it does happen. All this option does is basically, if it detects it across in different libraries across different drives, it'll actually, on your Jellyfin media server, pour all that information into one display, so you don't have duplicates across the screen. So we're going to enable it anyway. And like before, we'll enable these options too. And again, you could do the same thing for music if you'd like, but we're going to just do movies and TV shows for now. So we're going to move ahead. Country region is the United Kingdom for me. Now, at this point, it's down to you, really. Do you want to allow remote connections to the server? All this means is that if you decide to expose this to the internet, you should be able to go to your public IP address and get to this. I highly recommend using a reverse proxy such as Xeroxy or Nginx Proxy Manager. Both videos are linked in the description below. They will keep you safe when you expose these services to a certain degree. The rest obviously comes down to you, your experience, and what you're doing. An automatic port mapping essentially is, do you want this to try and ask and negotiate with the firewall if it's allowed to open those ports for you or not? In my environment, this wouldn't work because I have a dedicated prosumer firewall called Firewall Gold SE. And it wouldn't accept this because I have this function turned off on the firewall, so only I can set these things up. So you can certainly enable this option if you want to see if that works, and then go and check in your router settings. Most people will probably want to set that up if you want to expose this outside the web. Don't feel that you have to make these decisions now. You can just leave it as such, and I'll go into this with you a little bit later in the video, and we'll talk about it a bit more then. But we'll go through all the installations first, and we'll get to the configuration side later on. So we'll leave that as is. And essentially we're done. So we should be able to click finish now, log in with our user, and we should see our media setup on the server. The user we chose was Keith. And our password. Okay, so what it's discovered here is the 2 copyright-free media that I've put on here. We've got our movies and our TV shows, and Jellyfin, just like Emby, gives you a host of different ways to customize this. You can literally change the images of the movies folder to pretty much be whatever you want. So yeah, so you can have a look at these whatever you want. So you can see that right now it's detected. Next up, it's recommending The Lawless Years, which is on my TV shows part of the file. And if we click into this on The Lawless Years, you'll see that it actually pulled quite a bit of information from the internet on this. So it looks really, really professional for your media server. And again, this is your version of Netflix. You're literally hosting your own media server here. Now, The Lawless Years and the Popeye film that I have are both in the public domain now, and they're both copyright free, hence why I can show you these things on here. But just look at the level of detail that it's providing us here. Really, really good. Looks very, very professional. And if you're sharing this with your friends and family, you are going to be looking like the Don of media servers, because you are looking very professional. Now, we can literally just click play on these things and it'll start.
I'm going to add Brooks. Brother Willie, we return you now to Vincent Lopez and his music.
So, as you can see, looking very, very suave there. In fact, if we look at the media player itself, you can see that it's got quite a good amount of controls. You can favorite this. You've got volume. You've got settings where you can actually specify the type of the quality. If it's quite a low quality film anyway, this, so you don't only have the one option here. Repeat mode, playback information. So this actually gives you a bit of information here that if you want to see it, so you can see here it's HTML video player, it's direct playing off the server, which means it's not using the graphics card to transcode this, which we'll go into in a second. And you can see a few different things about it. So that's it's not bad at all. So moving on, you'll find that you've got the DLNA options up here, which means you can cast different devices in your network. If it's on those, if it's on PARD, it can find those things. And then you've obviously got sync play here as well, which is a really cool thing, because what this means is that if you want to watch films and TV shows with your friends or family, and maybe you're not actually watching in the same house or the same room, the same screen, you can create a sync play group, which means if you all join that group and you're all connected to this Jellyfin server, you can all watch this at the exact same time, which is really cool as well. So there's that. Now, let's move over here to the hamburger menu on the left-hand side. This actually gives you a little bit of more control over here, because you can obviously do sign out, you can look at the metadata folder, the all-important dashboard, and the user-specific settings as well. So what we're going to do now is go straight to the dashboard, which is going to basically give you an overview of what's going on. So as you can see here from the top, it's saying which server this is, what version you're running. You can shut down, restart, or scan the libraries. You've got what active devices are going on here, and then you've got the activity, what is going on, who's doing what. So it's telling you what IP address they're coming in from, what they're watching, when they're finishing it, and the different paths on your system as well. This will be the same no matter whether we're on Windows, Linux, or Docker. You've then got your general settings, which mean different things that we didn't have at the very beginning of the installation procedure. Create your own login disclaimer, enter your own custom CSS code if you want to modify like the login screens, the web interface. You've got a splash screen on there. Performance options. Create users. How many users do you want to create? And if you click on the user, you can actually get more specific granular control. So maybe this is one of your friends' accounts. Maybe you want them to have remote access, but you don't want them to manage a server or change anything. Well, you can undo that option. You can have them manage collections, edit subtitles, allow them to have access to live TV if you set that up on here. You've got media playback, and you can actually force transcoding of remote media sources such as live TV as well. You can set limits on the individual user bit rates so they don't maximize your internet connection. In fact, on my Emby installation, a lot of the users that I have, I set to a healthy 8 megabits per second, which is perfect for HD streaming. It gives them a nice quality view, but it doesn't batter your server in terms of bandwidth. You can allow or disallow deletion from the libraries or remote control, and it does go on. Now that is a really good feature that I'm spotting by here, by the way. Failed login attempts before the user is locked out. Now that is not on Emby. I can tell you that right now. If I go to my Emby installation, yeah, that is not there. That is fantastic. I'm actually only just finding that out right now as I go through this. Absolute amazing. So obviously, even on Emby, you can do the maximum number of simultaneous user sessions. So how many people can log into the same account you send them before it starts stopping them. On mine, that'll be usually 1 or 2, depending on what devices they have and things like that. I am really loving that failed login attempts before the user account is locked out. That is amazing. Loving that. Let's not get hung up on that, though, at the moment. So, yes, we've got users. We've got our libraries here, which we can click into and modify the settings post-creation. So maybe you don't want to do these chapter images anymore. We could take them off and click OK. TV will be slightly different as well. You've got display. Now, this is something interesting. So the way data is added, content to your library, do you want it to be added into the library based on its file creation date, or the date it was scanned into the library? I prefer the date it was scanned into the library, because if I have a new TV series dropping and then it goes based on the date it was created, it might not show up right at the front as next up and recently added. It won't show as the most recently added potentially if you don't have that option set. So I prefer date scanned into the library. And that's pretty much what I prefer there. So I'll save that. Then you've got your metadata, match source, NFO settings. So so that's obviously just giving us just year, month, dates. I would have preferred it obviously to be kind of UK like, which would have been day, month, year. Save user watch data to NFO files 4. Not going to be specific on that one. Copy extra fan art, 2 extra thumbnails field. Playback. So hardware acceleration is currently not selected. This is something you're going to want to select. Now I have an NVIDIA GPU on here, so I'm going to click NVIDIA, and then it has detected the NVIDIA RTX 3080 that I have. And then I can select all these different options here, which means that if anyone comes across a bit of content on the system that is not fully compatible with their client, either they're watching on a mobile phone, a PlayStation, Xbox, a TV, whatever, if it's not compatible, my graphics card will take over and help do that. So instead of seeing that direct play, which we saw earlier on, we'll see transcoding. So that's actually fine. It's got a decoder. Allow encoding. Yeah, why not? Yeah, why not? And tone mapping. This is great for if you're watching HDR content. Lots of people have different options in here. I'm not going to really go into the different options on the tone mapping here because there are plenty of videos out there that actually do that. But literally, if you want more defaults, you can literally just click on here and it'll take you to the documentation around that. You actually boost the audio when it's being transcoded as well. quite a lot of options. Throttling transcodes is definitely something you're going to want to employ, especially if you have multiple users on your system, because what this means is during the transcode procedure, so when someone is watching something on your server that their device might not be entirely compatible with for a smooth playback experience, it will transcode, and that will start using your graphics card or dedicated or shared to send this information out to them in a container format that's compatible with their device. However, it will just continuously do this until the end of the clip has finished transcoding, even if they haven't watched all of that information. Well, throttling the transcodes just mean that it just goes just enough ahead where they won't get buffered, they won't get any of that annoying pausing, but at the same time, it won't go so far as ahead to use all the resources on your server, on your GPU, the integrated or the dedicated. It just is a good option, I believe. If it's just you watching this, maybe you don't need to enable that. But I've never had a downside or seen a downside to enabling the throttling of transcodes. So that's a good option. In fact, unlike Emby, this is actually giving you an option to throttle after seconds in which the transcode will be throttled. Must be large enough for the client to maintain a healthy buffer. Only works if throttling is enabled. Again, that's not an Emby, and that's a fantastic option. That's very granular control. Loving that. Then you could change the percentages of which to resume, how far back it goes back when you click play. So maybe you've just paused it or stopped it, gone on a break, come back, and then you've loaded it back up. Where to does it start? This is going to be an optional per bit limit for all other devices outside of your local network. So if you don't want to set individual user speeds, you could just go in here and chuck an option in again. So something like 8 should be fine for HD streaming. And then this literally just, everything that's not on the local network will get limited to the 8 megabits. Again, it's all about not filling up your bandwidth, not using all your bandwidth on your internet, so that other people in your house, for example, won't start complaining that the internet is becoming really, really slow. And that, if you are getting that and you're running your own Jellyfin or Emby, that could be the reason why. Now, this option is on Emby as well, same as the individual user controls, but that could be a reason. So, yeah, we do that. You got your trick play as well. Again, if you're getting options for hardware encoding, I would always take it. It just makes things a little bit better. Takes things off the CPU as well. And then down here, you've got your devices. So you'll start seeing this populate with, quite a lot of different things. It could be Chrome, Fire Sticks, it could be tablets, Samsung, iPads, all the different devices that people on your network, on your Jellyfin server are using, will populate in here to say what they were using at the time and when. You've got your activity. This is a nice little screen. Usually on Emby, you'd only see this in the dashboard. So this is nice, telling you exactly what information's happened at when. You've also got the option here of enabling live TV if you have a tuner device, or maybe IPTV if you've got connections coming in from the outside world. You can even add TV guide data providers. So you can have like your guide of what's on, what's coming up, what's previous. And you've also got DVR access as well, which means you can actually record that live TV coming in to your system, put it into certain folders, and watch it again later, just like you would with a media provider's set-top box, for example. Moving on to something a bit more technical will be the networking side of things. So as I mentioned earlier on, that you might not want to run this immediately if you already have Emby running. That's simply because Emby and Jellyfin both use the exact same ports. For the local HTTP, 8096. For the HTTPS listener, it's 8920. Now, at this point, you could change them here. You can change them in the background in the ini files as well, which I'll show you in a second. But you can change the ports here. So if you wanted to put them on a port that wasn't, being used, or maybe something else completely different, you certainly could do that and they would work fine. And just as a little bit of tidbit information here, you can actually change the port number for Jellyfin. You can actually change the port number for Jellyfin by going to the program data directory. So if you go on your PC, whichever drive you installed it on, go to program data, Jellyfin server config, look for the network XML file, right click and edit. You can do that Notepad++ or whatever you want to use. And basically, if you come down here, you'll see internal 8096 internal HTTPS port, and then you've got the public facing side of it. So just match these up. So if you want to change that to port, I don't know, 9999, make sure you do it again up here. And that should be okay to go. Click save, restart the server, and that'll work out fine. So if I'll just demonstrate that for you. So for the local port, I do 9999, and we do 9999, and we click save, just Control S. If I stop Jellyfin, exit Jellyfin, Jellyfin tray app, start that up. We click allow because we have changed the port now, so it might need to amend those details. That's a good point for your firewall as well, and your reverse proxy. Make sure everything matches up. So now that's working. Open Jellyfin, and you'll see it's on 9999. So you can either do it in the dashboard, or you can do it through the configuration file. Just wanted to show that difference. You can also change the base URL. So if you are running this in a reverse proxy, for example, and you don't want a subdomain, you could put it at the / at the end of the URL. But generally, it's recommended to just leave the base URL empty and run it from a subdomain or fully qualified domain name. You can bind this to a local network address. Again, if you're just the average user, you don't need to worry about this. LAN networks, you can also tell it specifically what your local LAN is. Maybe it's not going to be picked up if you have a lot of VLANs or you've got a lot of different types of network configurations going on. If you know what you're doing, feel free. If you don't, just leave it there. It's not essential. It automatically gathers some very basic idea of what your local LANs will be, such as like the 192 or the 10 dots, and we'll understand that. It's literally just so that it can help set bandwidth restrictions on clients connecting if you want them to, and therefore you can treat what's on the local network versus what's on the external network, and you kind of get to decide what an external network is if you put in here what the local network is. But if you don't want to get into all that, you don't need to worry about it. You can still enforce bandwidth restrictions on all remote connections, as I mentioned earlier, through the bitstream settings. Known proxies, so you can actually put in here a list of known host names or proxies that you use to connect to your Jellyfin instance. And then you've got your HTTPS settings here. Now, if you are using a reverse proxy, then in actual fact, you will just need to reverse proxy to the local HTTP port, which is 8096, and then set the configuration up in your reverse proxy to do that. I will actually show you that now. And what we could do here in Nginx Proxy Manager is as such. We could do Jellyfin, and then whatever domain name you've got pointing towards your system. Now, I have two domain names, one actually for the outside world, and then one in my local area network. Yeah, so I'm going to use that. Obviously, I'm going to obscure that because that's directly to me and my network. And then you'd put in your machine IP address where Jellyfin is installed, and then port 8096, for example. We're going to enable block common exploits. We're going to have WebSocket supports, and we're going to apply the SSL certificate for that domain name. Now, specifically for you, I do have a video on setting up Nginx Proxy Manager and proxying to services, which I will leave in the link in the description below. So if you haven't got that reverse proxy set up, I even have a Xeroxy one, which is a nice fresh one for Windows as well. So if you want those two, you can use them on Linux or Windows, by the way. I have them in my videos. So if we go ahead here and we literally just click save, here we go. And as you can see, Jellyfin is now spun up my password that I set up earlier on. And now it's proxying all that traffic through the reverse proxy straight over to my machine with Jellyfin. So you can certainly do that, and you need to make sure that you've got the allow remote connections to this server tick enabled, because this is what's going to allow those users to actually get access to the system. Likewise, in the user's setting, your user must have the allow remote connections to the server on their account as well. Just so you're aware. One thing I didn't cover earlier on for the users, by the way, is you do have these other options which you can actually choose which libraries people have access to and parental controls. and you can force a reset password in here as well if need be. So yeah, so that's pretty much networks covered. You can set up your own custom SSL certificate if you'd like. It has to be in a PKCS12 format. And if it does have a password, you can put that in there. Ultimately, I just do find it much simpler and easier. I've done it this way in the past, and just running it through Nginx Proxy Manager. As you can see, I don't have enable automatic port mapping in there. But again, if you're having issues, turn that on if you need to. If you don't know what you're doing, it literally, like I said earlier, it will try to configure with your firewall. And if you've got one from your internet service provider, that option should work pretty well because it uses something called Universal Plug and Play, UPnP. We're only using IPv4, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So yeah, and it's important to know, obviously, when changing these values, it can cause instability or connectivity failures. So what I would personally say is every time you click save after changing settings in here, refresh the page and jump back onto your web reverse proxy to make sure it's working. If it's not, revert those changes while you're here so you don't forget later. API keys are really cool. We'll be using this later on with Jellyseerr. And it just basically allows different services to connect into your Jellyfin instance to retrieve certain information, especially when it comes to like server dashboards and things like that. You've got your logs, which you can literally click on, and that's got an error processing the request. That's not pretty good to see, is it? Why is that? That's a fresh install. No idea why that's got an error processing that straight off the bat. Time so. You can set up notifications if you download the relevant plugin. There's a whole plugins section. These are the currently installed plugins, but there is a catalog. You can even choose which repositories you want to enable in here. There are different videos around the web to give you information on that. And as you can see, quite a lot of different plugins on the go there. Last but not least, you've got your scheduled tasks. That could be part of your backup plan if you want to do your backup and restore on here, and you have the plugins for them. Or you can just manually start these up yourself. So that is the basic configuration for setting up Jellyfin. It will be a very similar process configuring the setup on Linux and Docker. I'm going to show you next how to do this on Linux and then on Docker, but I won't go through the configurations on all those systems because it's extremely similar to this. So I'll just get the basic install process working for you. So let's move on to the installation process for Linux. Okay, so Jellyfin can be installed on Linux just like Windows and Docker, and its installation page, which I'll link in the description below, does have quite a few different cool scenarios in which you can actually install this. Now, when it comes to my specific setup, and if you're using Debian, Ubuntu, and derivatives using apt, it has a Ubuntu command. So we're going to do that. And the first step in doing that is actually opening the terminal. And SSH, and I believe... Okay, so I'm surprised with that. So that's absolutely fine. The command we're going to be using is this one. But what we're going to do first is we're going to just run sudo apt update. Just because we should always update the repositories before we begin to mess around with it. Okay, we've got 43 packages that can be upgraded, so let's just get that on the go. So let's do sudo apt upgrade. Yes, we do. Okay, so that's an interesting command there. We'll just click OK for this because we're going to do a system reboot now. Okay, so now that's out of the way, we're going to go ahead and launch this thing. So we're going to grab the curl command from the website. I will link everything in the description below. And we'll see what we can't do. Let's do sudo at the beginning here and just put the password in here. Okay, so that looks good to me. So it's saying 826. Now let me just check something. Sudo uncomplicated firewall status. Inactive. Okay, so I don't have the uncomplicated file on here. If you do, you are going to need to put the allow command in, which would go something along the lines of this: sudo uncomplicated firewall allow 8096 TCP. And then you would put that through and that would update it. My firewall is actually showing as inactive on my test server. I don't have it on that often anyway. But yeah, if yours says active, then go ahead and make sure you put that allow rule in. And you might even need to do the 8920 depending on what you're going to configure. If you can have a SSL in here, or if you're going to reverse proxy, just be aware of the ports you are going to need to open. With that said, let's go to that IP address. That was 192.168.1.99.8096. And we've got Jellyfin. Here we go. So go back now to the configuration at the beginning of the Windows install, because that'll take you through everywhere you need to go. And obviously, the only differences really are going to be in the paths, where you're going to be using forward slashes instead of backward slashes for Windows. I'll give you a quick overview here. You got your media libraries. We're not going to add anything in here. United Kingdom. We're just going to go ahead and do all this a minute. We're just going to log in here. And obviously nothing's here at the moment, but like I say, go back and look at the configuration on the Windows machine there, because that'll teach you everything you need to know. I just want to see if the graphics card's been detected on here. Playback, transcoding. It's going to be AMD on this machine, not NVIDIA. Yes, it has. So because all these options have popped up here, the graphics card has been detected. Otherwise, you'd need to go and install those first. So yeah, that's looking awesome. And that's what I was talking about the paths. You're going to see, obviously, lots of forward slashes instead of C drive, /backslashes. So go back, have a little look at the configuration on there, and you should be good to go. So that's the installation procedure on Linux. Very similar to Windows. It's just command line versus GUI. That's all. And now I'm going to show you how to install this on Docker. Okay, so as you know, we've done Windows, we did the configuration and the entire setup of Jellyfin in the Windows side of things. So if you were looking for, and you've completed the Linux side of it, make sure you go back into the Windows side of it, just to have a look at the configuration I've set up, because they're almost exactly the same. Very little difference at all. And the same for Docker. I'm going to show you the basic install for Docker, but go back to the beginning of the video where the Windows install was, just to see that setup and that configuration. So that should be good for you to go. So with Docker, to get this set up, you can use the exact commands that you see here. But I'm going to choose to run this via the Linux server Jellyfin repository image. And we're going to go through it on here. So essentially, I'm just going to scroll down. I will leave all the links in the description below. Okay, so let's copy this. We're going to head over to Dockage. Now, if you don't know what Dockage is, Dockage essentially is Portainer in a simpler format. And if you don't know what Portainer is, it's basically just a way of managing your Docker containers in a really easy to use manner. Highly recommend downloading this. I got an awesome video in the description below, which I will link for you. And all we've got to do basically is take that copied compose file. We're going to paste it in here and then make some adjustments. This is how you install Jellyfin on Docker. So we're going to go with Europe, London. Okay, and we're just going to amend this to be the same as the host machine. 159. This basically sets the auto discovery service in Jellyfin. Depends what system you're running Docker on, I suppose. You could be running this on Windows. You could be running this on Linux. This could be run on a lot of different platforms. So it depends. If you're running this on a Linux system inside Docker, then you would continue those forward slashes, and it might be something like home. On my other server, it would be Kflix, my apps, and I would put Jellyfin. That would be the root the root directory there that I would be employing that on. As I'm running Docker Desktop on Windows, it's slightly different. So it's going to be kind of just the Windows paths on this side. So in my case, that's going to be, and essentially that's what we're going to do, Jellyfin Docker library. And that way, I can show you where the media files would be. You obviously know where yours are on your system. So this will be for the TV shows and the movies. Again, just for demonstration purposes, all configuration will be seen from the Windows side of it. So when you're looking for the configuration, just go to the beginning. The cool thing about Docker is you can immediately start changing the ports without any major configuration. Do not change these two ports. These are used for the DLNA and the discovery services across your network to cast and things like that. But you can change these two if you want to. We're going to keep these the same at 8096, but I just want to make sure I shut down Jellyfin on the Windows host there, just what we do. Otherwise, there'll be a conflict of ports. Everything looks good there. Just going to name our stack Jellyfin and deploy. And as you can see in Dockage, you get to see your Docker containers downloading in real time and then deploying. And if there were any errors, they would pop up here on the screen and in the terminal as well. So it's created this default thing. There you go. And essentially, that's just spinning the server up like it would on Linux or Windows in the background. But this is all in a Docker container, which some might argue is more secure. Okay, that looks good. Everything stopped spinning around there, so we're going to just head to port 8096 on the local host. Is this going to work? Yeah, I'm going to say don't worry about that. Delete that. Oh, hang on, banger. There might be... Ah, there we go. Okay, it just needed a few seconds. I think what the problem was there was that the browser is the same as what I was using earlier on, and I think it would have been cached to the server we'd set up on Windows originally. After a few minutes of refreshing there, that's sorted itself out. I didn't have to do anything major. So essentially, as we've done all along, we'll just do in there. Libraries, we'll do movies. I know I said I wasn't going to show this, but because obviously it's inside Docker, it might be worth showing. So it basically be data TV shows, and that corresponds to the outside here, which is, this is the inside part onto the host. This is the inside of the container. So external, internal. All right, you think the container is isolated. So this is what's on the Windows host or the Linux host, whatever you've got running. And then past on the right-hand side of the colon will be the inside of that container's path. Data, TV shows, data, movies. Hence why you can see that written here. So we're going to set up, I believe I said movies first. We'll do movies. Okay. And as earlier on, we can configure all these different things and set these up. Okay, so this is a good little point here, guys. Libraries. Yeah, I put it at data movies, look. Yes, indeedy. Make sure we're putting it as the TV series. And then it should just scan itself. Which it did. And there we go. That's better. Exceeds the limit. Yeah, so that is transcoding. Okay, so knowing this, on Windows, you're going to need to specify, if you use WSL2, the GPUS all environment variable in the Jellyfin compose. I will have this linked in the description below, so you can just copy and paste, and all you'll have to do is amend your volumes at that point. I've also got this additional resources driver in here. Deploy command must be in there as well for the Windows version of Docker. For Jellyfin, go to the dashboard. Yeah, transcoding. Okay, so that's very clear now. So to get Jellyfin to transcode while on Docker, while on a Windows host, you need the GPU's all environment variable and these deploy conditions. It's imperative you're also using an NVIDIA driver here as well. I haven't tried this on AMD. Okay, so let's move on to installing Jellyseerr. Now, Jellyseerr is basically an application that allows your friends, family, even yourself, quickly access to request content that might not be on your instance of Jellyfin. And you can actually connect this thing up to the Rs apps as well. And I have a link in the description below for one of my most viewed videos on my YouTube channel, which is my Rs app setup guide and the Usenet setup guide. So if you're new to Usenet and maybe looking for an alternative to torrenting, for a faster alternative, then that's also down there as well. Check those out. They are big videos, and they're my most popular videos on my channel. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the Fallen Bagel Jellyseerr. It's had over 5 million downloads, very trusted source on the Docker Hub. And we're just going to copy this, go into our Dockage. And if you don't know what Dockage is, as I mentioned earlier, it is an alternative to Portainer. That's also in the description below. So let's change a few things up here. So we're going to go Europe, London. We're going to change that to info. We're not going to need the debug. Ports, 5055 sounds good. And as this is running on my Windows operating system and in Docker at the same time, so it's Docker Desktop on Windows, we're going to give it this specific directory. You choose whatever with config at the end. If I was running this on my Linux Docker, obviously it wouldn't look like that. There wouldn't be a C drive. So, that looks good to me. I'll put this compose file in the description below for you as well. And we'll just make the stack name that name. See what we can do. Okay, and there we go. That's spinning up. And it's ready. So if we go on to port 5055, you can type your IP address in or localhost. This will bring us to Jellyseerr. Now, it does give us the option immediately to log in with our Plex account. We're actually going to click the option at the bottom here, use your Jellyfin account. So it's going to be Keith, and the password will be test 2024 with a capital T and a %sign. Here we go. So that's got us in there. So we can sync libraries. Yes, we'll have all these. Start the scan. And we should be able to continue. And this is really cool because this is where we can add our radar and sonar instance for this. Now, the thing is, my radar and sonar instances won't be configured to work with the directories on this system. But essentially, what you would do, I will show you. You just go into radar. So if I go on to my radar instance, and I go to settings, scroll down to general, what it's going to be asking for is the API key, which I'll put in here. Obviously, I won't show you guys that, although I don't think it makes a difference. So if we're going to add radar, we'd say the default server, the server name, we just put radar 192.168.159 on port 7878, the API key, profiles, and it says we need to test to get all this stuff first. Okay, so we've got the test, that's connected successfully. Okay, and these are my folders that are actually on that server, my production server, and that's why you can see all these where we couldn't see these on the current test server, if that makes sense, because they're isolated from each other in that regard. So if we just do, I don't know, data movies, if we added it, look, we'd be able to see it there. And finish setup. We won't bother with the sonar one, but it's exactly the same process for sonar. And then basically this is what Jellyseerr looks like. Now at this point, what you would do is once you'd synced everything up and you'd connected sonar and radar into the mix, obviously sonar and radar would be connected in turn to your download clients, and all the directories would be matched up. Now, if you go and look at my videos in the description below on how to set up your Rs apps, you will have a better understanding of what has just taken place here. But this is not too far different from Emby. I do believe Jellyseerr can actually control your Emby users, yes, your Jellyfin users rather, so you can import them, and there's no others to import because it's only my account on here. But you can actually create local users in here and things like that, which are pretty useful as well. Proxy support, image caching, set request limits, permissions of the users. what they can and can't request, and how often. And obviously we can marry up sonar as well if we wanted. It's got a good notification system in here. That's nice to see. Good logs. Exactly what you would expect from a really good application that's going to be on this level. And that's basically what you can do. And it shows you all the latest films that are out, pretty much like IMDb would. So there's nothing wrong with that. And yeah, it looks like it's going to work exactly the same way Emby would work that I use with Emby. The Wages of Fear. Great films. And, make sure that you legally own this content and downloading it from sources that you're legally allowed to download from. Check out that Usenet video, because that will show you all those legal methods of downloading those things. Apart from that, that pretty much wraps up setting up Jellyfin with Jellyfin. We've married those two services together, logged in with a Jellyfin account that we've set up on Jellyfin, and then done that via Jellyseerr. And I've showed you how to connect your radar services up, and sonar is exactly the same way. Literally, you put the API key in there. From that moment, well, I hope you've enjoyed the video. I know it's been a very long video, one of my longest, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching.